Hello everyone, it's me, Teacher Patrick, your buddy to another science and learning adventure. Cause here at Deped Pa, learning is fun! But before we formally proceed on today's quest, let me give you some online class tips for homeschooling students like you. With proper guidance of your parents, you can stay healthy mentally, physically with these online class tips. Number 1. Take regular breaks away from computer screen. Spending long periods of time looking at computer screen is one of the culprits for eye strain. Number 2. Stick to a routine and track your progress. By keeping a regular schedule for their online classes, they'll be able to lag up on time and still have a chance to do other things they like. Number 3. Prepare healthy meals and snacks. Giving students healthy and nutritious food and drinks will keep them energetic, focused, and happy throughout the day. Number 4. Drink lots of water. With children attending online classes at home, parents could start training or retraining them to drink water gradually throughout the day. Number 5. Get a good night's sleep. Good quality sleep is vital for children's physical growth, cognitive abilities, and mental health. And lastly, don't forget to socialize or have a family time. These things can be a good reminders for children that despite the challenges, they have their family, friends, and community to support them. For today's lesson, you are expected to meet this given most essential learning competency. We have explain the occurrence of evolution. Are you ready? Then let's start. Whoa. Easy. Easy. Stop. Stop. Go. Go. Do you know why dinosaurs no longer exist today? Look at these animals. Whoa. Can you name them? Why some animals before are very different from the animals we have now. Oh, from grade 7 to grade 9, you have learned that organisms are grouped into kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. You also learn that organisms possess unique characteristics. Some organisms may look the same. But they have distinct differences from each other. Others may not be related to one another, but they have similar functional features and characteristics. You may also wonder why some animals that are present before no longer exist today. Such extinctions of organisms were caused by various environmental factors and human activities. Today's lesson I will give you an idea that maintaining individual differences and variety of characteristics are important to ensure the survival of the species. For us to understand clearly what these concepts are about, let's answer first this question. What is evolution? Hey everyone! Yes, you! Have you wondered why everything around you looks the way it is? I mean, why do giraffes have long neck? And why do birds have different types of beaks? Or why do you have a cutesy whoopsie nose in your face? Well, everything around you is the result of evolution. So what is evolution? Evolution is defined as any change in the heritable traits within a population across the generation. I know this could be a bit difficult to understand through definition. So, let's find the answer to a groundbreaking question. How evolution works. But before that, let's trace the history behind the theory of evolution.
Today, many of you will have heard of evolution and natural selection, but it hasn't always been this way. In the early 19th century, scientists were still very much in the dark as to how living things evolved. While the idea of evolution had been around for a while, the phenomenon went unnamed and was without a proposed mechanism until Jean-Baptiste Lamarck had an idea. Lamarck, a zoologist, noted that animals seemed very well suited to their environments and suspected that throughout their lifetimes, animals improved themselves. For example, a giraffe's long neck was thought to be the result of the animal's continual stretching in order to reach food that was higher and higher from the ground. Lamarck also thought that these changes caused by the animal's struggle to survive were passed on to the next generation, which then continued the evolutionary process. In other words, a new baby giraffe would have a longer neck as a result of its parents stretching for their food. Before looking into another theory of evolution, a little test for you. According to Lamarck's idea, what would happen if two animals that had spent their lives using their right limbs far more than their left limbs had offspring? If you said something similar to their offspring would have had overdeveloped set of right limbs, you're right. Around 2 years after Lamarck's death, a young Charles Darwin set off on a voyage that would change his life and science forever. Prior to setting sail on the HMS Beagle, Darwin had spent some time studying under some of Lamarck's contemporaries and thus had an understanding of Lamarck's theories on inheritance. What he found on his voyage, however, did not seem to fit with Lamarck's ideas. Instead, Darwin developed his own idea of descent with modification. The key difference here is that in Darwin's idea, the traits of the parents were passed on without being modified by the life of the parent. What Darwin realised was the importance of the fact in any population of living organisms there already exists variation in any given characteristic. As a result, he argued nature would favour, or select, the fittest variants. This is natural selection. By fitness, Darwin meant the ability of an individual to survive and to pass on its characteristics to the next generation. Over time, changes in the characteristics of a species could occur. He also proposed that the changes within a species occurred very slowly through a gradual process. In the case of the giraffe neck, natural selection would continually favour giraffes with longer necks, so that over time the average neck length in the population would gradually increase.
Let's sum it up. Let's have the work of Jean-Baptiste Lamarck and Charles Darwin. Under Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, environment changes, thus creating a need to change. Development of new features in order to survive. Newly acquired traits are somehow passed down to offspring. The theory of use and disuse. And lastly, increasing complexity and no extinction. Under Charles Darwin, variations of inheritable features change which already normally exist. Environment selects for factors contributing to fitness of individual. Those with selected traits have higher survival and reproduction rates. Survival of the fittest. And lastly, differential survival and extinction.
Amazing! Those are great individuals who dare to lay the foundation of the most intriguing concept in science. I should say, evolution. Let's find out from this simple activity how evolution can be compared from the ideas of these great personas. Let's have Darwin versus Lamarck. From the set of statements I'll be showing, I want you to identify if it's Lamarck, Darwin, or both. Are you ready? Good. Let's start.
Who thought of this? The theory of use and disuse. Very good! The theory of use and disuse was proposed by John Baptist Lamarck. Question number 2. Who thought of this? The theory of natural selection. That's great! The theory of natural selection was proposed by Charles Darwin. Question number 3. Who thought of this? The theory of acquired characteristics. That's great! The theory of acquired characteristics was proposed by John Baptist Lamarck. Question number 4. Who thought of this? The organs or parts of the body that are not used will be lost, and the organs that are always used will develop. Good job! This idea was proposed by John Baptist Lamarck. Question number 5. Who thought of this? The survival of the fittest. Nice! The survival of the fittest was proposed by Charles Darwin. Question number 6. Who thought of this? Living things had gradually changed over time and were still changing to be better. Good! This statement were defined by John Baptist Lamarck and Sir Charles Darwin. Question number 7. Who thought of this? Certain traits help organisms survive and reproduce better than the other organism without those traits. Perfect! This idea was proposed by Sir Charles Darwin.
Great! It seems you can now differentiate the ideas of Lamarck and Darwin. But only one of those great minds stand out, and his theory is widely accepted until this very age. On the notion that life is related and has descended from common ancestors. Do you know who it might be? Well, let's get to know Sir Charles Darwin.
(1835), the Galapagos Islands. Young English naturalist Charles Darwin collects animal and plant specimens for study. His observations on these islands will be fundamental in formulating his theories, which many years later will be published in his great work On the Origin of Species. A revolutionary book that changed the way biology was understood, giving rise to new scientific theories. In this book, Darwin laid down the scientific principle that each species had not always been the way we know it today. Rather, each one had changed and altered over time. Three concepts are important for understanding Charles Darwin's theories: natural selection, evolution, and the origin of species. In animals and plants, random trait mutations and modifications can appear. For example, a moth that is born a different color than its parents. Imagine that this mutation or new trait improves an animal's ability to survive in its environment. Animals with this favorable trait would be better adapted to where they live and have a better chance to feed themselves and to reproduce than other animals of the same species without that trait. The offspring of parents with favorable characteristics will normally inherit those same characteristics. So, generation after generation, a trait that was rare occurs more frequently, becoming the norm within the species. This process is called natural selection. With the passing of time, these favorable mutations accumulate and species change, constantly adapting to an environment that never stops changing. Here's how the evolution of species takes place. Two groups of animals of the same species that adapt to two different environments over time can come to constitute different species. This way, a process as simple as natural selection helps us to understand the origin of species. Charles Darwin was one of the most important men of his era, and many consider him among the most influential scientists in history. His theories on the origin and evolution of species were very new for his time and are still studied and discussed to this day. Darwin died in 1882. His legacy changed the thinking of an era and opened the door to a new way of understanding science, the world, and the role humans play on this planet.
Darwin dedicated a large portion of his book on the origin of species in identifying the patterns in nature that were consistent in evolution. And since Darwin, our understanding has become clearer and broader. Darwin's theory of natural selection can be simplified through the idea of survival of the fittest. That is, the natural process by which organisms are best adjusted to their environment and are most successful in surviving and reproducing. Survival of the fittest, in our Filipino way of saying, matira ang matibay. So, in line with our current situation, Can you share to us some of your survival tips during this pandemic? Be fit, fight COVID. The effects of COVID-19 are enormous worldwide. Many people have died because of this pandemic. As what some say matira ang matibay in this challenging situation, Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection, which means survival of the fittest, is very important in this pandemic. So, complete the graphic organizer by supplying ways on how to survive this time of pandemic. Great! Very good! Now, let me share to you my ways of survival during these times. Well, the effects of COVID-19 are enormous worldwide. Many people have died due to pandemic. That is why this idea is so essential. Here are 9 ways to protect yourself against coronavirus COVID-19. Number 1. Wear a mask when you're around people. 2. Spend time outdoors to get some sun and boost your vitamin D. Stay healthy by eating a well-balanced diet and exercising. Try to maintain a 1-meter distance from those around you. Avoid crowded places, especially when indoors. Keep windows open to increase ventilation when indoors. Wash your hands frequently for at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. If you have fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical care. Going back to evolution, looking at every level of organization in living systems, biologists see the signatures of past and present evolution. Organisms inhabiting the Earth have changed over time. Their structure, traits, and abilities allow them to adapt and survive in the environment. And so, data from fossil records, anatomy and morphology, and embryonic development could be analyzed to demonstrate if evolution of life on Earth has taken place. And that's what's in store for you on our next episode. Let me leave you with an inspiring quote from Mahatma Gandhi. Continue to grow, continue to evolve. See you next time. Bye-bye. Hello everyone, it's Teacher Patrick. I'm glad you could join me today. Like you, I'm very much excited for another fun science learning adventure. For today's lesson, you're going to meet the given most essential learning competency. We have explained how fossil records, comparative anatomy, and genetic information provide evidence for evolution. But before that, let's look back at our previous lesson about evolution. What is evolution? Who is considered the great mind behind evolution? How Charles Darwin expounds the idea of evolution. Great! Very good! It seems you're ready for another science learning adventure. But wait! Let me bring you to our first learning destination. Did you watch the news last July 2020 about a megalodon tooth? Well, a fossil tooth of megalodon that lived 20 million years ago was discovered in Maribok, Bohol. The tooth was discovered by Christian Bangalo in Barangay Handig. Well, the tooth was donated in the museum. Well, by the way, what is a megalodon? A megalodon is considered to be the largest giant predator shark that lived the world's ocean about 20 million years ago. The data suggests that mature adult megalodons had a mean length of 10.2 meters and the largest specimen measuring 17.9 meters long. That's huge! What is a fossil, by the way? What are the other evidences that would validate that any organism, aside from this gigantic shark, really evolved? Have you ever seen a fossil? Wait. Fossils are evidences used by the paleontologists in studying evolutions. They are traces of organisms that lived in the past and were preserved by natural process and catastrophic events.
What is a fossil? A fossil is the preserved remains or imprint in a rock of a plant or animal, usually one that lived a long time ago. Many of the fossils discovered so far are ancestors of organisms living today, whilst some fossils are the remains of organisms that still exist. The study of fossils is called paleontology. The total number of fossils and their placement within rocks is known as the fossil record. Much of what we understand about evolution comes from studying fossils, so they are really important. But how do they form? When animals or plants die, their remains usually decay to nothing. It is only if the conditions are right that they can be preserved as fossils. The best way to create a fossil is to trap and quickly bury a dead organism. The dead remains of animals and plants that fall to the river or sea floors get covered in layers of sediment. Over time, this sediment sinks, as it is buried deeper by increasing layers. Meanwhile, minerals permeate through the sediment and gradually recrystallize the non-decomposed remains. This process is called permineralization. In some cases, the whole skeleton eventually dissolves, leaving a space in the sediment which becomes filled with mineral deposits in the exact shape of the original structure. In this way, a cast of the original structure is created. Eventually, the pressure exerted on the lower layers of sediment is sufficient to turn it into rock. Millions of years later, this rock may rise to the Earth's surface, where erosion and earthquakes eventually expose the fossil. While whole-body fossils can be created in this way. And so can trace fossils. Trace fossils are the fossilized remains of things animals or plants have left behind. This includes footprints, tracks, dung, and even lightning strikes. Another way to create a fossil is by covering a specimen with a non-porous coating. Amber is the fossilized remains of sticky tree sap produced millions of years ago. Any insect or plant which was trapped in this tree sap would have become quickly coated, and there would have been little opportunity for the remains to decay. Fossilized remains of plants and animals made in a similar way are sometimes found in peat bogs, tar pits, or ice. So in this video, you have learned what fossils and the fossil record are. You have been shown different ways in which fossils are created, and have seen the difference between body and trace fossils. Do you have any fossils? Or are there any fossils in the area where you live?
As noted, fossils are remains of organisms which includes shells, bones, teeth, and even feces, which are embedded on rocks, peat, resins, and ice. Paleontologist is a person who studies fossils. Another term we can use for trace fossils are imprints or impression. Imprints are shallow external mold left by an animal or plant tissues with little or no materials present in it, while the term we can use for body fossils are compression fossils, which are the other side with more organic materials present. Now, let's test if you can differentiate a trace fossil from a compression fossil. Let's go! Unpuzzle my fossil! Classify the following fossils as the impression or compression. Number 1. Is it compression or impression? Very good! It's compression. Number 2. Is this compression or impression fossil? Very good! It's impression fossil. Number 3. Is this a compression or impression fossil? Great! It's an impression fossil. Number 4. Is this compression or impression fossil? Great! It's a compression fossil. Another hint of evolutionary concept is through comparative anatomy. Compare anatomy? What is that? Comparative anatomy is a comparative study of the body structures of different species of animals in order to understand the adaptive changes they have undergone in the course of evolution from common ancestors.
The central idea of biological evolution is that all life on Earth shares a common ancestor. There is much evidence for the theory of evolution. Homologous and analogous organs in animals and plants are considered to be major evidence in favor of the theory of evolution. Some traits in different organisms are similar because they inherited them from a common ancestor, and some similarities evolved in other ways. These are called homologies and analogies. We will look at the different characteristics and identify the homologous and analogous organs in the plants and animals we have selected. Homology. Homology is similarity in structure among different organisms which is inherited from a common ancestor. Though similar in structure, the function of the structure is different in different organisms. Homology in animals. In animals, Although structures are similar, they have different functions in different animals. For example, the forelimbs of some animals have a similar set of bones because they derived from a common ancestor. Depending on lifestyle, these bones have different shapes and will perform different functions. For example, let's look at organs such as bat's wing, wing of birds, seal's flipper, forelimb of a horse, and the human arm. We can observe that although the shape and size of the bones are not similar, there is still a similarity in their structure. They have the same set of bones: humerus, radius and ulna, carpals and metacarpals. Humans use the hand for grasping and doing work. Seals use flippers for swimming, and bats and birds use their wings for flight. The horse uses its forelimbs for running. Analogy. Analogy is a similarity in function in different organisms due to evolution. That is, species may also have similar traits even though they are not related to each other. This usually results because the species live in similar environments, fill similar ecological roles, and through natural selection, the same type of structure is favored in different ancestors. The structures in this case are known as analogous structures. Analogy in animals. An example of an analogous trait in an animal would be the wings of insects, feathers of birds, and wings of bats, which have common functions but different origins. The wings of an insect originated from the inner or outer surface of the insect's body. Feathers of birds originated from the forelimbs, and wings of bats originated from both the forelimb and membranous skin of the abdomen. Main points you should know about homologous and analogous structures.
Structures from different species which have similar internal framework, position, and embryonic development are considered to be homologous. Homologous structures may perform different functions in the species living in the different environment, or it may have the same origin but different in functions. Structures of unrelated species may evolve to look alike because the structure is adapted to similar functions. These are called analogous structures. Analogous structures have similar functions but different origin. Picture perfect. Analogous versus homologous. Classify the following as to analogous or homologous. Very good. The structure is analogous. Great! This structure is homologous. Nice! This structure is analogous. Great job! This structure is homologous. Very good! Great! Now, you can differentiate analogous structure from homologous structure. From the given set activity, can you say that humans, whale, or bat belong to a common ancestor group? And why? Charles Darwin spent 5 years circling the world to discover what became the origin of species. But you can discover the same things today without going anywhere. Because evolution is right there in your body. Really, huh? How is that possible?
Your tailbone used to be a tail. If you can move your ears, that's thanks to muscles you share with other mammals. That pink bit in the corner of your eye, a leftover of a third eyelid we can still find in lizards, birds, fish, and others. Goosebumps are a feature we share with lots of animals that didn't lose their body hair. And even hiccups trace back to the brains of fish and tadpoles, a brain signal they use to squeeze water through their gills. These body parts are just a few scattered pages in a larger story about our evolution.
But there are other fossils hidden in our body that tells even clearer tale how we came the way we are. One of these stories can be told with just a single picture.
These are images of chromosomes, the big chunks of DNA inside every one of our cells. When we look at images of human chromosomes next to those of other apes, they line up nearly identically, except for human chromosome 2. It seems to have no match next to the other ape chromosomes. Even weirder, humans have 46 chromosomes in total, 23 pairs. Those other apes, they have 48 chromosomes, 24 pairs. What could explain this? If we're supposed to be related, why are we missing a chromosome? Turns out we aren't missing a chromosome at all. Sometime during our species history, those 2 chromosomes that are still separate in other apes were welded to become our single human chromosome 2. Us, chimps, gorillas, orangutans all inherited the DNA we have today from some common ancestor with 48 chromosomes. But 2 of ours got stuck together along the way, and you can even see how they match up. If 2 chromosomes were glued together, you'd expect to find 2 centers, or centromeres, and we do. We'd also expect to find telomeres, the ends of each original chromosome, stuck head-to-head in the middle, and we do. Thanks to sequencing the human genome, we can spot the exact DNA base where this fusion happened.
Of course, it's one thing to share a link with chimps, but with chicken, that would require some strong clock and proof. Just like fossil bones, remnants of ancestors broken and buried in these hard-to-find places, there are many myths of creation around the world. And most will agree on one thing: humans are special. When we take a closer look at our biology, we can see the special theory is evolution. That is why, Katniss,
stay curious!
see you next time for another science learning adventure. Feel free to share what you learned with your classmates and peers. Don't you worry, more learning science episodes are coming your way. It has been your science teacher explorer, Teacher Patrick. Always remember, here at Definitely Pa, science is fun.